Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing a day after analysis. Yesterday I was at a different location where I was shooting 550 yards with AR-15s. And today I just want to basically, I brought the targets back. I want to look at the targets and, basically consider how the rifles did, how the scopes did, how I did, how the ammunition did. So the two rifles that I was shooting yesterday were these two right here. The Ruger MPR with the primary arms M8 Raptor. Okay, so this is a $1,500 scope. So we had this. Now this is a 1-to-8 power. Okay, 8 magnification. And then the other one I have here, I had a Palmetto AR-15. So both rifles are budget, right? These are both like $500 to $600 rifles. But that's a $1,500 scope. This one over here is a $450 scope. So this is also primary arms, SLX 1-to-10 by 28. So this is a, first of all, it's a 34 millimeter tube versus 30 millimeter tube, but it is a 10 power, okay? It's got, basically this one over here has Japanese glass, which is considered more prestigious, right? Ended up being a little bit more clear. However, this one over here has an extra 2 magnification. So instead of 8 magnification, I had 10 magnification, okay? So that's one of the things that we're going to consider today. But first I want to talk about the bullet drop that I saw. So both of these scopes have been zeroed in. They were both zeroed in with this ammunition, right? This is 223 Remington, 77 grain Sierra Match King, okay? So that's the ammunition. I have hit a half-inch group at 100 yards with both of these rifles using this ammunition. Okay, so both of these rifles are capable of a 0.5 MOA at 100 yards. I don't hit it every time, but that's mostly me. That's because I'm not that good. Also, the wind sometimes plays a factor. But both these rifles shoot really well. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the Ruger with the $1,500 scope. I'm just going to call it the $1,500 scope because it's just easier for me to reference this M8. So let's take a look over here. Actually, let me bring you guys. By the way, I also have a different one here. We're going to talk about this one over here afterwards because there's some very useful information that we're going to get out of that one. Let me bring you up just a little bit. All right, so this is with the shooting the Ruger with the $1,500 scope. Initially, I had a bullseye like kind of in the center over here. I moved the bullseye. I'll explain to you why in a little bit. But basically, I had the bullseye here in the center of the paper. Now, at 550 yards, you can't see the blue dot. So it's like there was no bullseye on the paper. I'm basically using the entire piece of paper as a bullseye. Okay. So with the M8 Raptor, the Raptor has a hold for 550 yards, and that's what I held. And what I was doing is I just held 550 yards at the center of the paper, which is right here, completely covered the bullseye. Basically, that line is probably like about that big, right, at 550 yards when you're looking at it. So it kind of takes up a space about that big. It looks, let's say, something like this. That line is going to look something like this. So that would completely cover that up. But you're able to center it on this paper. By the way, this paper is, it's about 22 inches across, so it's about the size of a man. So this is what I was centering. And what I saw is that when I was centering on the paper, my bullets dropped down here, the circle one. So I fired 10 shots, and out of the 10, I got 6 on the paper. These 6 over here. The other ones went off. I actually was able to see one on the post that was like right here on the side, but that's not going to help us. But with these 6 shots, we got a 7-inch group. It doesn't mean anything because we're missing 4 bullets. But the point is, though, we were holding in the middle, and our drop, is about 18 inches. Okay. So what I did is I shot this again. The second time I shot it, what I did is instead of holding in the center of the paper, I didn't adjust the turns on the scope or anything. I held to the top up here, okay? So, and what happened is when I held to the top of the paper, you can see my impacts over here, and out of the, let me see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hits on this paper. Okay, so 8 out of 10 on the paper. The 8 that hit are basically a 9.5-inch group. Okay, 9.5-inch group out of the 8 that hit. Not that, you know, we can't call it a complete group because we got 2 completely off the paper. But the important information that I'm getting out of this is that we have a 19-inch drop, right? And that's kind of the reason why I put this blue over here, because I was looking. I actually had this out at 100 yards. I wanted to see how this looked at 100 yards, and I put the blue there so I could kind of see where the bullets were hitting, more clearly. Okay, so anyway, that's the purpose of the blue being there. It really doesn't matter. But the point, what is important is that we have a 19-inch drop here. So now remember, I had zeroed in at 100 yards using the same ammunition. So when I zeroed in, like I had my chevron here, and my bullets were basically hitting over here. I've done a number of videos, right, where I talk about the accuracy of these rifles. I show you the hits. So I mean, I've done it more than one time. I did a video where I show you where I get the 1/2-inch group with the rifle. So there's no question. I tested it on multiple days. This thing was zeroed in perfectly at 100 yards. Okay, so at the 550 yards, basically we're seeing this drop. Okay, this drop of 19 inches. So if I do a division, right? So the 19 inches divided by the 5.5, right? Like we're calculating this in MOA right now. So the 19 divided by 5.5. Okay, so basically I'm about 3.5 MOA high. Okay, so what this is telling me, okay, that in order for me to get my bullets to center around my bullseye at 550 yards, at 100 yards, I would have to zero this 3.5 inches high. So I would have to be getting, if that's my bullseye, I need my impacts to be right about there, which is not crazy because, right, so 3.5 inches, they'd have to be impacting about up here. And that's not crazy because if you use a 50-yard zero on an AR-15, at 100 yards, you're about 4 inches high. Okay, sometimes even 5 inches high, depending on the length of your barrel or whatever. So this isn't like, something completely out of the ordinary. If I zero this 3.5 inches high, I can easily hit targets at 100 yards, right? Because you put here, great, I'll be a little bit high, not a big deal. And then I can use the bullet drop to get out to 550 yards, and my bullet should be impacting right around the bullseye. Now, or if I wanted to, I could just leave it like this, right? And then I would just know at 550 yards, I would have to put, let's say, my hold on the head in order to hit the chest. Given that these rifles I pretty much have set up for distance shooting, it makes more sense to me to fine-tune these at distance, right? And then basically at 100 yards, hey, being 3.5 inches high, not a problem. Now, so that was the Ruger MPR with the $1,500 scope. Let me flip this around. Okay, so now we're looking at the Palmetto with the $450 scope, right? The SLX 1-10 by 28. It's got the M10S Mythen Grid. Okay, they got these wild names, these scopes. So with this one, same deal. I have done a number of videos over the past couple of weeks where I'm shooting this with the same ammunition at 100 yards. I got my chevron here, and my bullets are basically hitting right about there. So when I took this out to 550 yards, initially I was holding in the center of the paper. Because remember, the hold that I'm using now, this has a mill grid. So with the mill grid, I think I had to go down to 3.5 mils. Okay, that's the equivalent, right? So it was 3.5 mils down, right? Actually, I should make a note of that. 3.5 mil hold. So with the remember, so the 3.5 mil and there was hardly any left and right wind yesterday, so I was basically just holding in the center. So that 3.5, that line basically is about this thick when you magnify it and you're looking at this thing, which is tiny at 550 yards. So that goes like right there in the center. And then what happened is, with this in the center, the bullets dropped over here, right? So from the center of the paper down, I'm basically about 13 inches down. And the nice thing about this is I managed to get all the hit. I mean, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 out of 10 at 550 yards with a Palmetto $500 rifle, and using this using this $450 scope. It's a $100 mount, so I got like a total of like $1,100 in this rifle right here. Okay. Oops, what happened to that? Get a stable. That thing's gonna be flopping around. Back up there. Okay. One more here. Okay. So so we got 10 out of 10 at 550 yards. The total group is 12 inches. Okay, if we discount that one up there, the one that's like as a flyer, we've got a 10-inch group. Okay, but we're definitely inside of 12 inches. Now the drop, like I said, is about, from the center of the paper, is about 13 inches. Okay, so I did the same thing with this. I said I shot it again, this time holding at the top. Now remember, the line that I'm holding on is about that big. Now, if you ask yourself, why is this one dropping 14 inches? Why is the other one dropping 19 inches? Because the same thing happened here. This is the second group came in. It came in about 14 inches down. Now, here's the thing. The thing that I'm holding with, right, the line is about this thick. So if you're like a little here, like was I here or was I here? You know, exactly how was I holding? I don't remember. Was I holding up here? That's probably the what accounts for why I'm getting a 14-inch drop on this side versus a 19-inch drop on the other side. Okay, so that's accountable for. I can dig that. You know, because between this group and this group, the drop is consistent. So we've got from the top of the paper to the center, we got 14 inches. Guys, look at this group over here, man, at 550 yards. The total group, okay, these are the triangles I marked. The total group is 10 inches, right? And I got one flyer here, which I remember, I pulled that. I mean, I saw that move off a little bit. If you discount this one over here and you look at just the 9 shots, the 9 shots at 6 inches, man. All right, 6 inches. And then look, I got over here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shots, 3 inches at 550 yards. So anybody that tells you that these budget rifles can't deliver, you know, here's the thing. Maybe 20 years ago, budget rifles couldn't deliver, but you know, I guess the way that they're building these things, I mean, these things can deliver. Okay, the rifle is basically working, I think, near the max capability of the ammunition. Okay, when I did try going out to 850 yards, unfortunately I had to do a big jump because that location didn't allow for anything in between, because there's a hill, there's a big drop in between, so I had to go from 550 all the way up to 850, and I could only get one hit on paper. So anyway, back to this. Let's continue analyzing this. We got a 14-inch drop. So what does that tell us? So 14 inches at 550 yards. 14, right, divided by 5.5, right? Oops, did that wrong. 14 inches divided by 5.5. Okay, 2.5 MOA. Okay, so what this is telling me is that instead of zeroing in perfectly, right, at 100 yards, if I zero in 2.5 inches high, I should be impacting at exactly where I'm holding at. So between, and remember, the issue here is that the holding bar is kind of thick. It's kind of hard to perfectly center. I'm in my mind, I'm going to split the difference, because the other side was 3.5 inches high. This one is 2.5 inches high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero in these rifles, right, with these primary arms ACSS scopes. I'm going to zero them in 2 inches high. Yeah, 2 inches high. But that was bear. So something moving. I think it was a gopher or something. I'm gonna zero them in 2 inches high at 100 yards. And I think that when I use the hold at 550 yards, I should be a lot closer to my target. And again, at 100 yards, being 2 inches high, I mean, not a big deal, because if you're using a 50-yard zero, you're like 3 to 4 inches high anyway. So that's not something that we're not used to working with. Now, let me back you guys up a little bit. Get the rifles back into the view. So this is really cool, because we got 550 yards here. We got a paper that's basically about the size of a fat guy like me, okay? And we are getting some nice groups over here, right? So what I did is I about a month ago I had shot, month and a half, maybe almost 2 months ago, I don't remember. This is a different rifle. This is also a palmetto. It's got the primary arms ACSS, the original, right? So this is the $350 scope. That's the $1,500 scope. That's the $450 scope. So this is the $350 scope, the base one. And I shot this at 400 yards. Okay. So when I was shooting this at 400 yards, and I did a video the next day, I did a day after analysis, which was really good, because today I was able to go back and look at that video and see what the results of that day's shooting was, because I had kind of done the same analysis. Now on that day when I was shooting this rifle, what I did is I had it perfectly zeroed in at 100 yards, and then when I went out to the 400 yards, I saw that I was hitting low. Okay, so what I did is I adjusted, right? I didn't do that yesterday, but on that day I adjusted so that my bullets were impacting in the center of my paper, right? Where I was basically where I was holding. My bullets were impacting there. The following day I came back here and I shot it at 100 yards to now see that, okay, after I have adjusted it so I'm impacting center at center with my hold at 400 yards, I want to see what difference it made, right? So at 100 yards, I was 2.25 inches high. Okay, so I'm seeing a consistent pattern here. Okay, now I know that when primary arms developed this reticle, they tested this thing non-stop, right? The thing is, I think primary arms is testing these scopes out with the ammunition and their guns. They're testing them in the desert, in a much more dry environment. I'm basically on the water here, okay? Pennsylvania is very huge, it's very damp, okay? So and also my elevation here, my elevation here is close to 2,000 feet. Where I was yesterday, the elevation over there was 1,800 feet. So basically, my elevation, I believe, is a lot higher than what primary arms is testing these out. And I also think that what's actually probably playing even more of a role is the humidity. Okay, I'm in a pretty humid part of the country here in eastern Pennsylvania, and I think that that's probably the reason why my holds aren't lining up with what primary arms is doing, out in the desert when they're testing these things out. But not a big deal. I mean, if you know what that's why I do these videos, right? So that you guys know out here on the east, right? If you're in the eastern part of the United States, where it's more humid, you may need to do this. You might have to zero in 2 inches high at 100 yards, so that you can get out to 550 yards, and be closer to whatever you're holding on. Okay, so yeah, I think that this is really interesting the way this works out, and that's why these day after analysis are really important, not just for you guys, I think, but also for me, because at some point in the future, the next time I'm shooting at distance, you know, and I get some results, I'm going to want to come back and look at this video and compare it. Now, another interesting thing that came up, as far as the glass clarity, because here, which one? This one over here is a $1,500 scope with Japanese glass, right? This Raptor M8 Japanese glass, $1,500 scope. Over here we've got, I'm assuming it's made in China or something, $450 scope. You know, when I look through the glass at 100 yards or 200 yards here, I don't see a difference in the clarity. Okay. In fact, I did a video last week where I had shot a target. Now I didn't have circles around my holes. I just left the holes in the paper. And what I found is that I had all these 3 scopes lined up. At 100 yards, I could see the 22 bullet holes with any of these scopes. At 110 yards, I could only see them with the $450 scope, which had the 10 magnification, right? Because the expensive one only has, it's more clear glass, but this magnification only goes up to 8 power, right? That's a 1 to 8. The cheaper one over here, it's $450. It's cheaper glass, but the magnification goes up to 10 power. So in the video that I did on the day that I was analyzing this, what I found is that at 110 yards, I could see the 22 bullet holes with the cheaper scope because of the 10x magnification, but I could not see it with the 8x, despite the fact that it was Japanese glass. Okay, so now the brightness makes a difference, because today I did the same thing, and just because it's more cloudy today, I couldn't see those 22 bullet holes even at 100 yards. You know, before I put the circles on this paper, I couldn't see the 22 bullet holes even with 100 yards on any of these scopes. Okay, so if there's clouds overhead, that's going to make a difference. But now here's the interesting thing, right? Yesterday, when I was at the 550 yards and I was looking through the glass, I could clearly see that the Japanese glass, right, the $1,500 scope, I could clearly see that at 550 yards, I had a more clear picture. Okay, so the clarity is there, but you're only going to see it when you get out into an open field where you can really see at some distance. Now that didn't make a difference, because this one over here that actually hit the tighter groups, right, was with the cheaper scope. Okay, which is not the only reason why the more expensive one didn't do as well is because of me. I mean, I know I pulled a couple of shots, a couple of ones that you saw on the other side, on this side that went off the paper, right? There's a couple that went off the paper. There's one that went off the paper over here. That was because of me. That was not because of the gun. I pulled the shot. So that had nothing to do with it. But I'm just talking about, like, when I'm looking through the glass, I could clearly see that with the $1,500 scope, I can see more clearly. With the cheaper one, okay, I had a little bit more magnification, so I could see this target a little bit bigger. Now, it was a tiny bit more fuzzy, right? It wasn't as clear as when I was looking at the other one. With the other one, it was smaller but more clear on the more expensive one. But on the other one, now the question, what I'm getting at, does it make a difference, right? So on the cheaper one, the target was a little bit more fuzzy, but here's the thing, the reticle is crystal clear, right? Because the reticle you adjust with the diopter in the back. So on both of them, I could see the reticle clearly. So even though my target with the cheaper one was a little bit more fuzzy, just a tiny bit more fuzzy at 550 yards, not a big deal, because that chevron point, or rather the hold, I wasn't using chevron, I was using the, it's a mil grit, I was using the 3.5 mil bar. Basically, I was holding that to the top of the fuzzy target, right? Right? It was a little fuzzy, right? Maybe I couldn't see the edges as clearly, but I could clearly see just held it to the top, and I was able to get my target. So, my thoughts is, if you're just trying to hit your target at 550 yards, if the target's a little bit fuzzy, that's not going to make that big of a difference. Where it does make a difference is if you're going to be doing observation, if you're going to be looking through the glass for a long time, you know, just looking, not shooting and leaving, but just looking through the glass for a long time, doing observation, you know, it's really helpful. Like, the more clear your glass is, the less strain it's going to be on your eye. So I think that's where the glass clarity makes the difference, right? When you're doing observation over a longer period of time. But if you're just trying to get the reticle on the target and take your shot. It makes no difference if the target's a little bit fuzzy. The reticle's not going to be fuzzy because that you focus from with the diopter. So I think that's an important point that I should kind of put out there. And that didn't become so obvious until I actually got out to 550 yards. Now, what was also interesting is afterwards, I basically took some shots at 850 yards. I only got one hit, and the reason is because it was just too big of a jump from 550 to 850, and you know, the hold wasn't correct because this Raptor only goes up to 800 yards. It doesn't go up to 850. I didn't have the option yesterday of getting a little bit closer, and also we had this issue where I hadn't fully realized the issue of the drop and where I needed to hold. So that was so anyway. The point is that I could not. I only got one hit at 850 yards. But the interesting here is when you, as far as go with the M8 Raptor versus a mill grid, right? Okay, since I was not shooting at a distance that I was that familiar with, right? Using the mill grid was kind of out of the question. I didn't even try to use it at 850 yards because I had absolutely no idea where to hold at 850 yards with the mill grid, okay? Versus with the Raptor, that thing takes me out to 800 yards, and I say, yeah, you know what? I know where 800 yards is. I can hold a little bit more. So I think initially I tried it with what I thought was 8.5. Well, it only goes up to 800, so I held a little bit past 800. Didn't get any hits there, so I said. Then after that, it transitions to a mill grid underneath it, right? So then I went to 9 mils, right? I shot it with that. That's with the 9 mils. I got one hit like at the bottom of the paper, and then I tried 10 mils. With the 10 mils, I didn't get any hits, but I have a feeling that 10 mils at the top of the paper is where it needs to be. You know, I have a feeling. I got to test it out. But the point is that with the M8 Raptor, I could kind of make that jump, right? I could make that jump, whereas with the mill grid, because I had no familiarity with shooting at that distance, it was kind of like even pointless to try because I had no idea where to hold it. Using the M8 Raptor, I could see, okay, that takes me up to 800 yards. Then it transitions to a mill grid, and I'm like, okay, yeah, so now I'm going to try 9, and then I'm going to try 10. Because if I just went with the mill grid, I'm like, okay, do I go to 12? Do I go to 11? Do I go to 9? No idea. So that's yesterday's, that's the day after analysis for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know I did. I went into a lot of detail, but like I said, this is a detailed subject. You know, this is data collection. And here's the thing. You know, you might be in a different part of the country where your data might be different than mine. Let me know. I'll post it down in the comment section. I would love to hear, you know, what, you know, if you do something similar down south, right, in Florida, or, you know, out towards California, or up towards like Washington State. You know, let me know, you know, or in the middle of the country like Kansas. Let me know what you guys are getting. You know, zero in at 100 yards the way they tell you to, then get out to 550 yards and take your shots, right? And then measure the distance. You know, how far off are you from the bullseye? And let's compare notes. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.